Hello there, Nat. Thanks very much for joining me today. And maybe we could start off with you telling us a little bit about you, leading up to the point as to why we invited you to actually speak at our chronic pain conference as well.
Yeah, sure, yeah. So I'm a physiotherapist, and I actually started out life working in professional sport, so completely different to chronic pain. Mm-hmm. About 10 years ago, I went to see a lecture by Lauren Mosley, an Australian physiotherapist, who explained that pain can often be caused by physiological changes in the central nervous system. And that the brain has a lot to do with this. Our cognitions have a lot to do with reinforcing those changes in the nervous system. So you don't always need tissue damage to cause pain. And this just made me really interested in pain and what happens in the brain and nervous system. About the same time as that, I was actually struggling with irritable bowel syndrome, and made the connection that the anxiety and stress that I was feeling was causing these symptoms. So by starting to do some mindfulness meditation, I was actually able to overcome those symptoms. So that just sort of reinforced how much the brain is involved with the symptoms that we feel, and made me really interested in what's going on in the brain and nervous system. So I signed up to do a master's in pain science, which I completed about 2 years ago, and focused a lot on a master's in what impact stress has on our physiology. And then I think it was probably about a year or so into that when I met you in Bristol, and you explained the SIRPA approach to me, and that sort of made sense to me. At that point I was still thinking about chronic pain as something that needs to be managed, or with most people it needs to be managed. But then when you explained that how much emotions are involved in pain, it kind of fitted in with what I was looking at when I was doing the masters and looking at these neurophysiological changes in the nervous system. I was always thinking, what is it that carries on reinforcing these changes? Why in some people do these changes not stop, and why doesn't the pain stop?
And it was around that time that you then decided to come on the SIRPA practitioner training, wasn't it? It was a few years ago.
Yeah. So that's back in 2012 that I did the SIRPA training. Mm-hmm. And I've been using it ever since with people with chronic pain. And I've had some great results with people, results that I don't think I would have had before I started using this approach. We can see in people who've got chronic pain that there's a shift in corticolimbic brain activity, and emotional parts of the brain start becoming more active. Other parts of the brain start becoming underactive. We get these changes like central sensitization that start occurring in the central nervous system. And from my perspective, there's a lot of evidence out there showing that emotions, all these things are well known now, and sort of, I think, becoming much more generally accepted that these changes occur in the nervous system. But for me, it's what's reinforcing those. And I think once we start to look into the emotional side, we can start to see that emotions can cause a physiological effect that can start to reinforce those central changes.
But I think the nice thing about this is that there is so much more evidence these days. It's building up, and all the leaders in this field are beginning to converge in their actual understanding of what's going on, and the importance of looking at the psychosocial side of things and really seeing what is going on in the brain, and not just, pain in the brain, but actually how the emotions are impacting it. And that's really why we wanted you, as a physiotherapist and as a SIRPA practitioner and as somebody who's done an MSc in pain, to actually come and do a section on the pain science side at our conference. So thank you so much for rising up to the challenge and agreeing to do that.
My pleasure.
Sorry, what was that?
I say it's my pleasure.
Good.
To be able to do it, and
Fantastic. And so do you want to give us a sneak preview as to what you're going to be covering?
Yeah, so I guess it's some of the things I've just been talking about. So, you know, as a physiotherapist, we tend to focus on still, I think the focus is still on structurally, you know, what's going to lead to pain. Whereas actually, if you start to look into that, I would say there is more evidence for stress as being a trigger for the, you know, for the onset of pain rather than biomechanical postural issues. And then explaining how, you know, how I think that works, what goes on in the brain and nervous system physiologically as a consequence of the stress and emotional factors, what that leads to inside the brain and nervous system. So things like central sensitization, descending facilitation, so the brain being able to send signals down into the central nervous system to enhance the information that's coming up from the periphery, and then also what happens in the brain. So how, you know, neuroplastic changes in the brain, in people who've got long-term pain, how there's a shift towards more emotional parts of the brain becoming more active, and for more rational parts of the brain becoming less active, and that imbalance that you get in the brain and the nervous system can become a vicious cycle, and often that vicious cycle is driven by our emotional and cognitive factors.
Absolutely. And I think it's fantastic that there are more and more studies showing this, and so I know your talk is going to be very evidence-based. It's primarily about demonstrating the evidence base behind the concept on which our work is based. And we've got other people also talking about, for example, the adverse childhood experiences and the evidence base behind that, and chronic. So I know it's going to be a really exciting conference, but I think it's great that you're going to be there bringing to light a lot of the evidence, and also you know, it's amazing that we now have all this functional MRI availability for studies. And of course, Howard Schubiner is going to be running one of those this summer, or has been running one of those this summer, which is really going to be an exciting study. Hopefully he'll talk about that when he comes along to the conference as well. So is there anything else you would like to finish off with then, Matt, to tell people about what your talk is?
I just want to finish off with saying, you know, 2 years ago I attended this course and attended the conference, and it was a really inspirational day and really positive day. Very excited to be able to talk this time around, and it's just nice to come to a conference like this where there's a message of hope rather than, I think, a lot of the time with people who've got chronic pain, there isn't that message, and most people get told that they have to manage pain and that, you know, live with pain for the rest of their lives. So I think hopefully, you know, the talk that I'll give will just provide people, you know, with that there is physiological changes that occur. This isn't, when we talk about pain being produced by emotions, it's not that we're saying that this is all in people's heads. There is a real physiological process that is occurring to cause the pain, and hopefully I'll just be able to provide some of the evidence that shows how that happens. You know, how we can start to show that there is evidence that is building up and growing, and that we can't really ignore it anymore. That we need to really start to focus on this more in practice. And really start to acknowledge this, because I still think with most people who deal with pain, the focus is still primarily on the bio, and there's still not enough focus on the psychosocial and understanding how that impacts on pain.
Yeah. Fantastic. Well, I'm really looking forward to your talk, Matt, definitely, and I know it's going to be a really exciting day. So thank you very much for agreeing to do it, and thank you for chatting to us today to give us all a bit of an insight into what the talk's going to be about as well.
That's all right, my pleasure. Yeah.